right, so we're diving into Chinua Achebe's Things Fall Apart.
Okay.
And I'm really excited to kind of unpack these excerpts he sent over.
Yeah.
It seems like we're going right into the heart of, pre-colonial Nigeria,
Yeah.
the Igbo people.
Well, what Achebe does that's so fascinating is he doesn't just tell the story. He drops us right into a culture
Right.
that's on the brink of massive change.
Yeah.
And so it's a glimpse into, pre-colonial Nigeria, the Igbo way of life, their society, how intricate it is, and how they deal with things like ambition and family
Right.
in the midst of these seismic shifts.
And speaking of ambition, I mean, we were introduced to Okonkwo.
Yes.
And this is a man who he seems so driven by it.
Yeah.
It's almost like he's
It's like he's trying to.
trying to run in the opposite direction of who his father was, Unoka.
That is such a great observation, and it really gets to the heart of Okonkwo's character.
Yeah.
Because Unoka, his father, was considered a failure.
Right.
By their standards, lazy, carefree. He loved music and celebration more than he loved hard work, which were highly valued in their society.
Yes.
And so that context, I think, is so important for understanding why Okonkwo is the way he is.
And so then we have this detail,
Yes.
which you pointed out,
Okay.
about Okonkwo drinking palm wine from a human head.
Yes, yes.
And I'll be honest, the first time I read that, I was like, whoa.
It's intense.
This is tense.
It's meant to be.
Yeah.
Because in our world, that's shocking.
Right.
But for the Igbo, it's a sign of respect
Yeah.
and accomplishment.
Okay.
And remember, Okonkwo wants to be everything his father wasn't.
Right.
So while Unoko was content with music and merriment,
Right.
Okonkwo strives for titles and for war.
It's like this outward symbol of,
Yes.
I am not my father.
Exactly. That detail shows us the lengths to which he'll go to prove himself.
Yeah, he's carrying that weight
He is.
of his father's reputation almost,
Absolutely.
and trying to carve a different path for himself.
Exactly. And that brings us to, I think, the importance of understanding the Igbo world as a whole.
Right.
Because this isn't just a backdrop.
Right.
This is a society with its own beliefs, its own customs.
Hmm.
They have a very unique justice system.
Right.
And their relationship with language, especially proverbs,
Yes.
is so central to how they communicate.
That's right.
Remember that line about proverbs being the palm oil with which words are eaten?
Oh, yeah, that's stuck with me.
Isn't that good?
It's such a great way to describe how much proverbs are a part of their language.
It shows their deep respect for language, right?
Mm-hmm.
Proverbs aren't just sayings. They're how they add depth and flavor to their communication.
Right.
And it reveals this art and nuance that's woven into their interactions. For example, when Okoye goes to Unoka to get him to repay a debt,
Yes.
instead of just, giving a straight answer, Unoka says, "Our elders say that the sun will shine on those who stand before it shines on those who kneel under them.
Mm-hmm.
I shall pay my big debts first." And takes a pinch of snuff.
Like, it's all settled.
As if to say, that's it, we're good.
And it's so frustrating because, poor Okoye.
Exactly.
He's coming at this like, hey, can you just pay me what you owe me?
You owe me money.
Right. And then Unoka's coming in with this proverb, and he's like, okay.
And that's precisely the point. Proverbs allow them to navigate those kinds of situations with this incredible subtlety.
Right.
They're layered with meaning. They often mask true intentions.
Mm-hmm.
And they help them to kind of avoid direct conflict.
It makes me think about how tradition seems to govern every part of their lives.
Yeah,
I mean, from marriage to family,
that's everything.
even how they deal with the death of a child,
Yes.
with this whole idea of Ogbanje children.
You're hitting on such a crucial aspect of their culture, right? Because tradition isn't just this set of rules, it's the foundation of their society.
Right.
It shapes their values, their beliefs, their interactions.
Right.
Every single one. Now, the Ogbanje is a complex belief, but essentially, imagine a child is believed to be a malicious spirit who dies
Oh, wow.
and is reborn repeatedly just to torment the mother.
That's heavy.
It's heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And it highlights how deeply intertwined their spiritual beliefs are with everyday life.
Right.
When a child is declared an Ogbanje, it's not just about the child, it's about the spirit world,
Right.
intruding upon the human one.
Wow.
And they even perform rituals, digging up this Iua, this supposed link to the spirit world, and destroy it to try to break this cycle.
It's a harsh reality.
It is.
For sure.
Yeah.
But it makes you realize just how different.
It's a completely different worldview.
Yes, their worldview was.
Yes.
And speaking of tradition, the arrival of the locusts.
Oh, yes.
I feel like there's a fascinating parallel there.
Oh, absolutely.
This detail about them returning once a generation.
It's powerful imagery, right?
Yeah.
Just waiting a lifetime. And then suddenly this wave of locusts descends.
Yeah.
And devours everything in sight.
It's like this break from the natural order.
Exactly.
Right.
Disruption of the familiar.
And isn't that essentially what happens with the arrival of the white missionaries?
Precisely.
They come in as this other kind of force.
Those locusts foreshadow this much larger force that is about to challenge the very core of Igbo society.
Right.
Because they're not just bringing, a new faith, they're bringing a whole new order.
Right.
And just like the locusts consume the crops,
Right.
this is going to consume, but their entire way of life is at stake.
And they're met with fear, but also curiosity, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
yes.
They build their church in the evil forest.
The evil forest.
A place where everyone fears to go.
Right.
And they survive.
It's a pivotal moment.
Yeah.
Because the evil forest is taboo.
Right.
It's a place of deep fear.
Right.
And the fact that it doesn't harm them throws their whole worldview into question.
It's like that one thing, right?
Yes.
That starts to plant those seeds of doubt.
Yes. This one event cracks the foundation.
Yeah.
And it paves the way for change to take root.
It's like the ground is shifting under their feet, and they don't know what to grab.
Exactly. Yeah, it's like he's trying to hold on to
a
world that's slipping through his fingers.
To something that's disintegrating.
Yeah. And speaking of control, you had sent over some stuff, too, about their justice system.
Right.
The Igbo justice system. And I have to say, it's kind of fascinating.
It's fascinating how they maintained order.
It's incredibly nuanced, too, It's not just about punishment.
Right.
It's about restoring balance within the community.
Yes. And like the Igugu, for instance.
Yes.
I mean, talk about intense, right?
Yes.
You had these masked spirits
Yeah.
who are judging cases, but they're also...
They're the ancestors.
They're representing the ancestors.
Right.
So it's like this whole other layer.
Exactly. Imagine, like, these figures who embody the authority of tradition, right? Like the direct link between the living and the dead.
Wow.
And they listen to both sides of the dispute.
Right.
And then they deliver a judgment based on customs and laws
Nice.
that have held their society together for generations.
And there was a real fear
Oh, absolutely.
of them.
Yes.
I mean, you even see like the women scattering
Yes.
when they appear.
It shows how deeply ingrained
Yes.
those beliefs were.
Yes.
It's like to disrespect the Igugu
Right.
wasn't just like disobeying, a man in a mask.
Yeah.
It was like spitting in the face of your ancestors.
Right. Like you were challenging the very fabric
The very foundation of their world.
of their world.
Yeah.
And their judgments were final.
Yes.
Like with the whole thing with Uzolu
Yes.
and his wife, Big Bafo.
Right.
That whole situation, I feel like it really highlighted how
How they valued balance and restoration.
yes, how important that was.
Absolutely. Because the Igugu didn't just decide who was right or wrong.
Right.
They issued a solution that was meant to, like, repair the fabric
Yes,
of the
yes.
community.
Right. Like this is how we're going to restore things.
Right. So Uzolu had to publicly acknowledge his mistreatment
Right.
and beg Magbafo to return.
Right.
And her family, because they were bound by this judgment,
right.
had to accept,
Right.
provided he, changed his ways.
Yes, it was a system built on tradition
Yes.
and collective belief.
Collective belief.
Right, which makes the arrival and the kind of the imposition, thank you.
Of the white man's justice system.
Yes.
All the more disruptive.
Yes, because then it's like you have this fundamental clash
This fundamental clash.
of these worldviews.
Collision of worldviews
Yeah.
just throws everything.
And it's like, how do you reconcile the two?
Exactly.
Right.
Yeah, and we see that most clearly, I think, in the events leading up to Okonkwo's exile.
Right, with the accidental killing of a fellow Klansman
During a funeral.
during the funeral, right?
Yeah.
It was an accident.
It was an accident.
It was a tragedy.
It was a tragedy, but one with huge consequences.
Huge consequences.
According to their customs, because, you see, killing a Klansman, even unintentionally,
Right.
was unsawani,
Right.
a transgression against the earth goddess.
Yeah, so this wasn't just like a crime against man.
Exactly.
This was a crime against the earth.
Against the earth goddess.
Right.
A crime that demanded atonement.
And that atonement was exile,
Exile.
which seems harsh, Right.
It's harsh to us.
Right. Being completely cut off.
Completely cut off from your people, from the land.
From your land, from everything you know.
And yet it shows how important community and this idea of collective responsibility
Right.
were to them.
Were to appeasing the gods. Right.
It wasn't just about the individual.
Right.
It was about maintaining harmony within the clan
Yes.
and with the spiritual world.
Right. And so he goes into exile. And then it's during this time that we start to see, like,
Seeds of change.
the seeds of change
Yeah.
really taking root back in Umuofia.
And Umuofia.
Because you have Obieka who goes and visits him
Yes.
and kind of fills him in on everything
On everything that's happening.
that's been going on, right?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, the missionaries, they're gaining a foothold.
They're gaining a foothold. They're building a church.
Yeah.
It's like this new order is creeping in
Right.
while he's powerless to stop it.
Exact.
And it's not just about religion either. They're also introducing a whole new system of government.
Right. A whole new way of life.
A whole new way of life that directly challenges
Yes.
the Igbo traditions that have defined them for centuries.
For centuries. And you see how some people are drawn to that.
Exactly. It appeals to some,
Right.
especially those who maybe never really fit in.
Right. The outcasts.
In the old system, yeah.
And so it's creating this division
This division
within the community
within the community
that he doesn't
that
understand.
he can't understand.
He even says, they are now soft like women,
Yes, yes.
you know? And it's like,
It's heartbreaking for him.
it's heartbreaking.
Because here he is, this warrior, this man who embodies traditional masculinity.
Right.
And he's been exiled from the very world
Yes.
that he has fought to uphold.
That he's fought to uphold.
His world, his beliefs, they're crumbling.
They're disintegrating.
And there's nothing he can do to stop it.
And to make matters worse,
Right.
he loses his son,
His own son, Onwoye,
Nwoye, to the new faith,
to the new faith.
which is like adding salt to the wound,
The ultimate rejection.
the ultimate
Of
rejection
everything he holds dear.
of everything he's ever known.
Yes.
Right.
And the loss of Onwoye is so symbolic, don't you think?
Yes.
Of the changing times.
Yes.
Because you have this younger generation represented by Onwoye
Mhm.
embracing this new path.
Right.
One that doesn't hold the same reverence
Mhm.
for the old ways. It's a harsh reminder that Okonkwo's world is fading,
Yes.
and he is powerless to stop it.
Powerless. And so here he is.
There he is.
He's been exiled. He's heartbroken.
Heartbroken.
And now everything that he knows is changing back home.
Yes.
You make anyone
Angry and frustrated.
frustrated. Yeah.
Like a caged lion,
Yes.
ready to lash out.
Yeah. And it's like all that pent up frustration leads to, well, that incident with Enoch,
Right.
the convert who unmasks an egwugu.
Oh, talk about a powder keg.
Right.
I mean, that is the ultimate act of sacrilege.
Right. Because again, we're talking
Do
about,
you remember what they represent?
yeah,
The
The-
Egwuwu.
the ancestors.
They represent the ancestors, the
Uh-huh.
very core of their justice system.
Yeah.
They're linked to the spiritual realm.
Right. He's not just defying a man at that
Yes,
point.
exactly.
He's defying your entire belief system,
Their entire belief system.
your entire worldview.
And the clan retaliates.
Yes.
They destroy his compound, the church. It's a desperate attempt to, like, regain control.
Right.
Right? To push back against this force that is upending their world.
Yeah, it's like this last stand to try to hold on to what they know.
Yes, to cling to those traditions, protect their way of life,
Yes.
but their actions have consequences.
Right.
Unintended consequences.
And that's when the district commissioner returns,
Right.
and he's not there to negotiate.
No.
He is there with the full force
He represents the full force
of colonial power.
of colonial power.
And he arrests the clan leaders,
Yes.
including Okonkwo.
Including Okonkwo. And so you have this clash of two worlds,
Two completely different systems that are not compatible.
two systems of justice that are completely incompatible.
Yeah,
Because on the one hand, you have the Igbo, right?
right,
Striving to maintain balance, to
Right.
appease the gods.
right. And then you have this other side.
And on the other, you have this colonial power
Right.
that is demanding obedience
Right.
and compliance.
Yeah. And there's no room
And there's just no room
for compromise.
for compromise.
Or understanding.
No understanding of the other's perspective.
Right. And Okonkwo's caught right in the middle of it.
Right in the middle,
And he's lost.
he's utterly lost.
His entire world, his beliefs, his sense of self.
Everything he's ever known, everything he's ever believed in.
Yeah. It's all gone.
It's shattered.
And then to see his people subdued.
Yeah, imagine that scene.
Yeah.
The district commissioner, surrounded by soldiers,
Yeah.
arriving in the marketplace, ready to crush any resistance.
Yeah.
It's just this brutal display of power.
And for Okonkwo,
And for a man
who, as we've said,
who has defined himself.
has defined himself by his strength.
By his strength and his adherence
Right.
to tradition.
She's devastated.
It's a devastating blow.
Yeah.
It's just too much.
It's too much.
And so he makes a choice.
Yes, in this final act of defiance.
In a final act of defiance.
He takes his own life.
He takes his own life.
It's so tragic.
It's such a tragic end to such a complex character.
Right.
Here's this warrior, a symbol of, as we said, traditional masculinity,
Yeah.
completely broken by the forces of change.
By the weight of change. And I feel like Achebe is saying so much with that.
Yes.
Right?
He is.
It's like he's saying that sometimes even the strongest
Yes, even the strongest among us.
can be broken by that weight.
Broken by the weight of change, especially when it's imposed with such force.
Especially when it's imposed.
Yeah.
Right? And so it really makes you wonder, how do we navigate these inevitable shifts?
It's a question that resonates even today, don't you think?
Yes,
I
absolutely.
mean, in a world grappling with globalization,
Right?
cultural shifts, the loss of tradition,
Yeah.
things fall apart, feels as relevant as ever.
Absolutely.
It really does.
It does.
It reminds us that progress, while necessary,
Right.
often comes at a cost.
At a cost.
And that understanding,
Yes.
respecting different cultures, is essential.
is essential in a world
In a world where those cultures constantly intersect
and collide.
and sometimes collide.
Yes. And Achebe doesn't give us these easy answers.
No, he doesn't.
Right. But he forces us to ask those questions.
He forces us to confront these very uncomfortable truths.
Yes.
These universal struggles.
And he does it all through Okonkwo's
He
journey.
does it with such incredible skill. Right.
Right.
Weaving in these Igbo proverbs, these nuggets of wisdom, this humor.
Yes, those proverbs that we talked about
Yeah.
in the beginning, which are so central
So central to their culture.
at their way of life.
He reminds us that even in the face of tragedy,
Yes.
even when things fall apart,
Right.
there's beauty, there's resilience,
Right.
and the enduring power of language
Yes.
and storytelling.
And storytelling.
It's amazing.
It's a book that stays with you
It really does.
long after you finish it. And I think for me, the most powerful takeaway is that the stories that we tell,
Yes.
the values that we uphold, the choices that we make, they don't just shape our own lives.
They ripple outwards.
They ripple outwards. They impact our communities and the world
Exactly.
around us.
It's a powerful message
Yeah.
and a fitting reminder that even though things may fall apart,
Right.
there's always something that endures,
Yes.
something worth fighting for, something worth remembering.
Beautifully said.
Thank you.